as I'm sure some of you know, Mindseye's off to a rough start. And honestly, it probably predated the release. When your chief financial officer and chief legal officer both leave the company just a week before launch, yeah, that's not a great sign. And that's exactly what happened with Mindseye. For some reason, no early review codes were sent out. Leadership was throwing out vague claims about smear campaigns. And honestly, they didn't really need a smear campaign. This game kind of did that to itself. What makes this even more wild is that Mindseye was built on Unreal Engine 5. I'd expect stunning visuals, cutting edge detail, maybe even a glimpse of what the future of gaming could look like with this thing. But instead, we got distant buildings looking like damn placeholders. The moon's just a blurry texture slapped into the skybox. And the lighting does nothing to elevate the experience, to be honest with you. It's the kind of game where screenshots might trick you into thinking it's gorgeous, or maybe even an exceptional trailer with great cutscenes. But once you start to play, you realize how unfinished it feels. I gave this game 3 solid tries, clocking in around 10 hours total, and I just couldn't keep going. I wanted it to be good. I wanted to push through. The more I played, the more I realized how little there actually was to hold on to. And let's start with gameplay. All right, you spend an exhausting amount of time driving from point A to point B. An exhausting amount. And then the game forces you to use specific cars every time, at least in the beginning levels. If you crash that car and there's not another car in sight, you're running for miles. Or you could just try to get yourself killed or restart from the last checkpoint. And oftentimes that checkpoint is a whole cutscene, which is very annoying. You can't grab another car even when there's plenty around. It's real restrictive and frustrating, man. And honestly, I can't believe that they would make a game like this, knowing that you have games like Mafia, Grand Theft Auto from 10 years ago that have figured this out, and insert any open world game. And then there's these missions. One mission had me tailing someone using my drone, and the AI car that was supposedly stealthily following her kept rear-ending her every time she stopped. It was kind of funny, but it was just another example of how poorly this game was put together. It was ridiculous. That mission didn't feel all tense or, strategic or anything. It just felt like it was a padding of a story, but also it couldn't even get the tailing right. And let's talk about the world. The world itself doesn't really help, right? You can run over people, you can shoot civilians, and the world, it reacts with nothing. No police, no consequences. NPCs kind of scatter a little bit, but it's like nothing happened after a while. It doesn't feel like a dystopian future or like a gritty sci-fi landscape. It feels like a movie set that someone forgot to finish building. It was kind of crazy. You can tell they really wanted to be immersive, but they missed the mark big time. It's really shallow. And then let's talk about the UI, right? Not the biggest issues, but like the instructions are like thrown at the bottom right of the screen, and it took me way too long to realize that they were there. It's not really game breaking or anything, but it's definitely annoying until you retrain your eyes to look down there. The whole interface feels like it was just sort of thrown together, really. Now here's where it gets kind of tricky. Replayability. I didn't really finish the game because I just couldn't. So I had to look some of this stuff up. First of all, there's no new game plus, there's no alternate endings, and there's no real incentive to replay the story. I feel like that's a huge miss. Now, that's not to say that you can't just have a one-off story, right? But you better have a spectacular game if you're gonna do that. That being said, there's one glimmer of hope though. Mindseye is part of a larger platform called Everywhere. And within that system is called Arcadia, a world builder that supposedly lets players create their own experiences and stuff. I didn't really dive into it, but it's definitely something that could be worth checking out if you're into that thing. So while the core campaign itself doesn't really, encourage experimentation, that creative tool might give it some life eventually, if it can last. All right, that said, I want to be fair here. The story itself was interesting, okay? I really enjoyed the story, at least where it was going. That was really the only thing that kept me coming back. I really liked the vibe. It was going futuristic, but not too far into the future. It had this like grounded, almost near future tone that worked for me. And the direction the narrative was heading, I genuinely was curious to see where it'd go. If the rest of the game had matched that same energy of the story, we'd be having a very different conversation. With all that being said, final score, 4.2 out of 10 based on my own weighted system, and the lowest score I've ever rated a game. Check it out. If you want a more in-depth look at how I come up with the scores, consider becoming a paid member. This is where I share behind the scenes thoughts including the process of my reviews, some creative decisions, my future content, and a whole lot more from the Roughnecks community. That's it for this one. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe for more content like this. This is Roughneck 6 signing off on that. Peace.